Hey everyone, it's Natalie here, and welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast. For this episode, I wanted to talk farmer research. You may notice that research is a theme for me. We talked about participatory plant breeding research with Nico and Julie, and applied kiwiberry research with Iago, but what about farmer research? You might be saying, my entire farm is one big experiment. Yes, I hear that. But what about when you have an idea, but the financial risk of trying it is just too great, or you don't have time to prioritize it unless you're getting paid for that time? Or you've observed something and have compelling anecdata, but you have a thirst for real data to verify what you've observed. If that's the case, it sounds like you might be ready for a SARE farmer grant. SARE is a federally funded program for farmer-centered research and innovation. Candice Huber works for them, and Jennifer Wilhelm has a no-till market garden near me in New Hampshire and has received 2 SARE grants to pursue some of her ideas. I am personally indebted to SARE because they funded research for my master's degree, my PhD, my podcast on soil organic matter, and they even provided funds to help this no-till market garden podcast. Jackson said getting SARE funding was, and I quote, instrumental in allowing us to dedicate more of our time to no-till growers and grow it into what it is today, a much more robust network of podcasts and videos. That said, SARE funding is competitive and there are limited funds. It's not guaranteed that all great ideas will be funded, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk with Candice and Jennifer was to discuss what makes for a strong proposal and how to lean on the technical service providers like extension agents in your area whose job it is to serve the farming community. Not just the big farms, but the small farms that are revitalizing communities around the country.
Today's episode is brought to you by RIMOL Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. RIMOL Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit RIMOLGreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a RIMOL tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process, so make sure to check them out. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmer's Friend. In a world where the threat of food insecurity is quickly becoming the new norm, Farmer's Friend exists to equip, educate, and inspire growers to change the world through regenerative agriculture. Small farms are the future, and the future is now. If you need quality tools and supplies for your vegetable or flower operation, check out their growing selection of innovative and affordable tunnels, tools, tarps, and much more. Here at my home farm, we rely heavily on Farmer's Friend for our production. We have 3 of their Caterpillar tunnels. We use the silage tarps for occultation. Their row covers have gotten us through hard winters. And of course, the Quick Cut Greens Harvester has sped up our baby greens harvest tremendously. Visit farmersfriend.com/no-till today. That's farmersfriend.com/no-till. Or visit the link in the show notes and get free shipping on your entire order. All right. Enjoy the show.
All right, so let's start with you, Jennifer. If you could just introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you get interested in agriculture?
Yeah, so my name's Jennifer Wilhelm. I live in the Seacoast, New Hampshire, and that's where I farm. I got interested in agriculture when I was doing my master's degree at UNH. I studied school garden program as a means of, as sort of like a jumping off point for institutional sustainability. And when I subsequently worked in high school and we started a school garden program, I had to learn more about how to grow things. And so I started working on local farms and did the school garden program and some other things. And that really kind of opened the door for me and my interest in agriculture. And I decided to go back to school again to study agroecology. And yeah, the rest sort of came out from there.
And when did you start your farm?
So we came to this property in 2013 and started transforming it with the permanent raised bed system in 2014, and that happened over the course of 4 years.
Okay, and we are going to get into that in a little bit, but Candice, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Candice Huber, and I manage the Farmer Grant and the Partnership Grant programs for Northeast SARE. And I've been with Northeast SARE since 2008. And I'm excited to tell you all about our Farmer Grant program.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about kind of I don't know if everyone knows what SARE even stands for and sort of the national SARE program. What are the goals and how does SARE see the role of producers in sustainable agriculture and specifically in sustainable agriculture research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so SARE, SARE, stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. And it's a federally funded program from USDA, NIFA, which is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And we offer competitive grants to fund research and education projects that advance sustainable agriculture practices in the United States. There are 4 regions that cover all of the United States. They each operate as a separate entity. So we have the Northeast, the North Central, the South, and the West. And so we obviously are in the Northeast region. And that's not just New England, but it's all the way from Maine down to D.C. and Maryland and over to West Virginia and Pennsylvania. And the research and education we fund are for farmer-driven innovations in agriculture that improve profitability, stewardship, and quality of life. And farmer-driven is the key phrase here. So the role of producers can be anywhere from doing the research to working with an educator or a researcher or a service provider to identify needs and then ultimately be able to use the results to improve their practices and quality of life.
So what is the farmer or producer grant specifically, and what's kind of the general structure of those grants? And then we're going to talk to Jennifer about her farmer grants that she's received.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the farmer grants, and in other regions they're called farmer rancher, the farmer producer grant. They allow farmers resources to be able to try something out, something that they wouldn't normally be able to afford to do. So while our other programs are open to anyone who is a farmer or works with farmers, and that includes researchers, educators, and agricultural service providers, to apply for a farmer grant, you must be a farmer. And that's a farm business owner or a farm employee at a farm. And these grants are not for starting up a farm, but to explore new concepts in sustainable agriculture. And that can be through experiments, surveys, prototypes, on-farm demonstrations, and other research and education techniques.
And one of the things I know that a lot of folks listening are market gardeners or small scale. So how does SARE define a farmer? Who is eligible as a farmer?
Yeah, you have to be a commercial farmer, and that means that you have to sell $1,000 worth of agricultural products in the year prior to applying for the grant, or normally would have sold that much. We realize that sometimes things come up, like, for instance, a pandemic, or could be a weather event, or something that got in your way for that 1 year. So we take that into account. But typically you have to be a commercial farmer selling $1,000 worth of produce in a typical year.
Yeah. So Jennifer, you are, I would say, since you've had 2, you're sort of a regular in the farmer grant recipients. So what were your farmer grants, and how did you get the idea for each of them? They're pretty different. So could you talk about that a little?
Yeah, sure. The first project was funded in 2018, and that was designed around the no-till permanent raised bed system that we use here at our farm. After several years of farming here and farming in this system, we had observed that the weed population seemed really low compared to what I had experienced working on organic farms in in New England where tilling is used as the main weed management strategy. And so we wanted to study the system more scientifically to see what story the data would tell and how that aligned with what we were seeing anecdotally. And we also just wanted to better understand the system as a whole, including soil health and production capacity. So we developed a proposal that included all three of those aspects. And then the second project is much different. It was that we modified our cold storage room to grow microgreens under lights through the winter. And the idea came out of a desire to more efficiently use our farm infrastructure. We spent a lot of time and money building a cold storage room that we had only been using occasionally during the summer months to keep harvest fresh before selling it. And at the time, we weren't growing a lot of storage crops, so the room was sitting unused for much of the year. And given that these rooms are super insulated and designed to maintain certain temperatures, we assumed that we would be able to maintain warm temperatures in the winter and wanted to see if it was not only possible to grow microgreens, but produce high enough yields to make it financially viable and have an income stream during the winter months when we don't normally have high cash flow.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, and I am happy to edit this out if you don't want to share, but what is your track record? Are these the only 2 grants that you applied for, and did you get both of them, or have you applied for others that you didn't get?
Well, I applied for other grants that I have gotten not as a farmer.
Oh, I mean the SARE farmer grants.
These were the only 2 that I applied for.
Yes.
And I got them both.
So
yeah.
what's your approach and how do you think you make your ideas really compelling?
So the NESARE Farmer Grant application process is very approachable, I think, and geared towards really helping applicants see their project in the context of farming more broadly. So being familiar with the types of small-scale farms that exist here in New England, I think helped us show how applicable these projects could be to other farmers and hopefully inform their decision-making around farming practices. So I think that was a big part of what we tried to focus on in this, is just not specific to our farm, but something that could be applicable to other small-scale farms.
Yeah. So Candice, what is the review process? Who's making the decisions about what gets funded, and what are some of the reasons why projects do or don't get funded?
So this is a competitive grant program. So proposals are evaluated by independent review teams, and those teams are made up of farmers, researchers, nonprofit staff, and agricultural service providers. And reviewers evaluate each proposal on a scale of 1 to 5 using the criteria that you can find in the call for proposals, so you know exactly what they're looking at. And the review teams score and comment on all the proposals and then provide that to Northeast SARE Administrative Council, and that's the program's governance body that makes the final decisions about funding. And so there are many reasons why some projects don't get funded. And sometimes the project is good, but it just doesn't rank as high as other proposals. We do have limited funds, so sometimes not all the good projects can get funded. Other reasons could include not providing convincing evidence that there's a need for the work and that it would have an impact on farmers. Or maybe there's not enough detail in the methods to show that the applicant has thought through the project. Or maybe the budget doesn't support the work that needs to be done. I would say those might be the more common ones, but there are a lot of reasons why projects might not get funded. The most important thing that reviewers are looking for is that the project is well designed to meet the proposed objectives, and that there's a promised benefit to farming communities, or a promise of benefit to farming communities. And this may sound a little daunting for some people who want to apply, but that is one reason why we require a technical advisor in this program. If you want to apply for a farmer grant for your project, you need to have a technical advisor. And this person can help you develop your idea, design your research, or whatever you may need to come up with a solid proposal, and also then help you while you're executing your project. So we really encourage people to engage with others. You're not limited to having the technical advisor. You can have other collaborators as well. But by getting help from others, farmers can really see how to write their proposals and what makes a good project.
What kind of a person would be a technical advisor? Yeah,
the technical advisor could be anybody who has experience in your topic. It could be an extension agent. It could be a researcher. It could be an agricultural professional. It could be another farmer. Just anybody who has experience in your topic, but is not doing the project with you or for you.
All right. So I know that people are going to be really interested in your farm, Jennifer. It's kind of is it 100% no-till farm? Yeah. So just your farm itself, I think, is going to be super interesting to people. So could you tell us sort of about the land, about how you set up your permanent raised beds, and then what you wanted to do. I mean, you already mentioned that you were sort of pleasantly surprised that there were very few weeds when you transitioned to this system, but what you wanted to do with your SARE Farmer Grant.
Yeah, sure. So our farm, like I said, we've been here since 2013. We started building the permanent raised bed system in 2014. And because of the way that we constructed it, essentially by hand, it took us 4 years to do that. And we're on 4 acres. We have about an acre in production with about a half an acre in permanent raised beds. So we also have a small orchard and small greenhouses that take up space too. But the permanent raised beds themselves are about a half an acre. And we began selling commercially in 2016. We grow a variety of fruits, vegetables, herbs, cut flowers. We had started out with a CSA and farmers markets, but we in 2020 transitioned to selling wholesale and directly to consumers. And we're in the process of building a little roadside farm stand right now, which is slated to open in the spring of 2023. So the system, the way that we built it starting in 2014, was we laid down 4 inches of hardwood chips on the sod, basically lawn. So the whole area that we constructed this on was lawn. And we laid down 4 inches of hardwood chips, then brought in compost and built the permanent raised beds out of compost. They're all 32 inches wide, and there's 2 different gardens. One garden has 50-foot beds, the other has 100-foot beds, and there's 18 inches between the beds for permanent walking paths. And so for the grant that was associated with studying this system, we assessed the system's effectiveness in suppressing weeds. And we did this by evaluating the weed seed bank in a greenhouse study. So we collected soil samples, we spread the soil out into trays, and then threw them out in a greenhouse to see presence and abundance of different types of weeds. We also did the same for a biweekly weed survey walk around the farm. And then we also tracked the number of hours we spent weeding. For soil health, we collected soil samples and sent those off to Cornell University Soil Health Lab. And then to look at yield or production potential, because the system was built over the course of 4 years, we had this inherent time trial almost. So we could look to see, is there a difference in how the permanent raised beds change over time? And so we looked at that for all 3 things. But we were also able to look at yield by growing oat grass. So we grew plots of oat grass in each of the 4 areas, harvested it, dried, and then weighed it. And then the dry weight biomass is what we compared to see if there was any difference in yield.
And I'm curious about your wood chips, if we could kind of back up. And also if we could back up, I think one of the things that's really interesting about your farm and about your project too is that you were starting on what you called marginal land. So like what is the soil there? And then also, as far as the wood chips, where did you get them, and kind of what were the upfront costs of establishing that way? And were you concerned about adding all that carbon?
Yeah, good questions. Okay, so
I know I threw like 3 questions. Sorry.
Yeah, so no, if I forget one, just ask again. But for the soil, marginal soils, because we're on what we think is a glacial esker, which is essentially a pile of sand. And people can see, we've got tons of pictures on our website if they want to kind of see the process. And I don't know if that's something that you want to include or not. I'm not trying to self-promote, but there's links to more information about this study that has a ton of pictures, so that can be helpful. But so marginal soils, lots of sand, and a really, really thin layer of organic matter. And so when we decided to buy the property, we had experience in using a no-till permanent raised bed system in an urban setting, and it worked really well. And so we just took that here and decided if we could grow cover crops and take our time to try to build our soil organic matter, or we could use wood chips and truck in some compost and have a faster turnaround. And so that's what we decided to do. I do have math, and I'll look at it maybe when Candice is talking later to come up with it, to show a rough estimate for per acre cost to build the permanent raised beds this way. So the wood chips, people can get wood chips. There's an app called ChipDrop.
Oh yes, thank you for bringing that up. I have heard about that.
Yeah. So arborists in different communities can sign up to unload chips at different places, and homeowners or farmers can add themselves to the app to say they're interested in getting wood chips dropped at their place. I happen to be married to an arborist, so that connection was really easy. So we got the wood chips in, we spread them all out, and then we bought compost to build the beds. And I forgot all of your other questions.
The last question, I think, was just about all the carbon you're adding with the wood chips.
Oh, yeah. And that's a really important question, because what we found in doing this over the course of 4 years, which was very consistent, was that the beds take about a full year. And I'm not sure, I don't have any data to back this up, so I'm not sure if it's that the soil microbial community needs to be established, or if it's that carbon or nitrogen is being robbed from the soil from the wood chips breaking down. But the first 2 years that we tried to, or like the first year after we built the beds, each of the first 2 years, we found that our cash crops did not do well. And so, but by the second year, they were going gangbusters, and it was great. So the third and fourth years, when we were continuing to expand, we planted cover crops for that first growing season. And then by the start of the second year, we were fine to plant our cash crops. So that was something that we found. My guess is that the breakdown of the wood chips is taking nitrogen out of the soil, and that the soil microbial community just isn't established yet, and it takes some time.
So just sort of physically, like how long does it take to before the wood chips are like visibly gone?
About a year. Yeah, it doesn't take very long. Yeah. I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
Right. Yeah. That kind of brings me to another question is, so one of the things that a lot of people who use heavy compost inputs find is that they end up with very high phosphorus levels. So I'm wondering how you currently manage fertility, and also if you think that you could have cut down on the amount of compost, given that you were really using these wood chips to bury the weed seed bank. You weren't using just compost.
Yeah. So phosphorus, when we did the soil health test, we found that phosphorus was high in 2 of the 4 plots. And so we stopped adding organic fertilizers that contained phosphorus to those plots. And we have a cover crop as part of our crop rotation that we do in the fall. And so we're due for another soil health test, and I'm hoping we'll see that the phosphorus that was high in those 2 plots is back down to optimal levels. If not, we'll just continue to not add more phosphorus through fertilizers. We're not adding any more compost. And I think if we could do it again and how we built it, we probably would add less compost in the initial construction of the beds.
So Candice, I'm wondering what in a SARE farmer grant, so you said you cannot use the money to establish a farm. So Jennifer could not have purchased compost to establish these beds, but what can you use the money for in a farmer grant? Can you pay yourself as a farmer?
Yep, you absolutely can request funds to cover your time working on the project. SARE will cover costs that are needed for the project and unique to the project. And the costs have to be incurred during the project period, and there's a maximum of $30,000. So when you submit a proposal, you also need to submit a budget. And you really need to think through how you're going to execute the project and be sure to include everything you'll need to be able to complete the project. So this will require researching prices. But it's an important part of the proposal. So as Jennifer did, SARE can pay for your time working on the project, and they can also pay for you to hire some help to work on the project. And side note, we encourage farmers to include payment for themselves that's a fair, livable wage. Don't just ask for $15 an hour. Really ask for what's realistic as a livable wage. We can also fund materials that you'll need to be able to do the work, any travel you might need to do for the research or for the outreach for sharing the results of the project, any publications you might want to produce, paying consultants or stipends, or if you need any equipment or space rental. Those are all the things that SARE will cover.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast is brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. At the heart of sustainable ag is the belief that soil health and thriving ecosystems grow the very best food. Certified Naturally Grown is a grassroots certification program that recognizes direct market farmers using holistic methods and shows your customers that the products you bring to market are grown to the highest ecological standards. If you're looking for an affordable certification option that focuses on the thriving of local farms and foodways, you're going to want to check out CNG. Their peer-to-peer inspections create opportunities for farmers to connect, exchange knowledge, and build regional support between growers. Certify your produce, flowers, livestock, apiary, aquaponics, or mushroom operation today. Find out more at cngfarming.org. That's cngfarming.org. Today's episode is also brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and much more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. We have been using a BCS tractor on our farm since 2014, and it has saved the day and leveled the workload more times than I can count. And I find new ways to employ it every single season. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. And while you're there, select tractors and attachments on sale through the end of this year. All right, back to the show.
So Jennifer's second farmer grant was really different about this microgreen production, and that had some upfront costs. So Jennifer, if you could talk about that a little more, and Candice just maybe chime in about, what is allowed in terms of upfront costs.
Yeah. That project was definitely outside my wheelhouse in that it required more equipment than soil. And on paper, the project seemed really simple, but in practice, there was a lot of engineering involved, more than I had originally anticipated. And thankfully, Jonathan Ebba from UNH Cooperative Extension was a huge help and technical assistance. And he really helped us figure out what equipment we needed. So we needed everything from lights to bottom watering trays to 10 by 20 trays, to the seeds and all that stuff. And so the SARE grant paid, the new SARE grant paid for all of that. And with Jonathan's help and some other UNH Cooperative Extension staff help, we were able to figure out all of the equipment that we needed, how it needed to be set up, and have the grant there to support it all.
And did you also include your time in there, or at the end of the day were you like, oh man, this is taking way more time than I had planned and I'm not getting paid for it?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't remember the exact budget for that, but yes, I think in both the permanent raised bed grant that we got and the microgreen grant, I did put in time for myself for both collecting data and analyzing the data. For sure, with the microgreen experiment, I did not allot enough time for myself for that, but it was worth it in the end. It was a great experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you get into it a little bit more? I enjoyed reading the little fact sheet that you wrote up. And as I was reading it, I was actually feeling a little bit intimidated too, because I was like, this is getting kind of technical, but it seems like you really worked through a lot and came out with a system that was really cool.
Yeah. So most farms, from my experience, most small farms in New England have cold storage rooms, and a lot of them use the AC unit with a CoolBot. And we built one of those ourselves, and they work great. On our scale, without growing a lot of storage crops, it's like a 3-month-a-year thing, and we spent so much money and time building it. We were trying to think of other ways we could use it. And so when we came up with this idea to grow microgreens, again, totally outside my wheelhouse, we approached UNH Cooperative Extension and talked with staff and found out that, yeah, they thought it was possible. And so with their support, I definitely don't think that we would have done this without their support. They helped us figure out everything from, which lights to buy, how far away from the plants the lights needed to be, how long the lights needed to run each day. And so we got the whole system set up with timers and the Inkbird system, which turns on the fans to help cool things off. So I think you mentioned reading the pamphlet we put together. The biggest roadblock we ran into was that the lights themselves produce so much heat that it was cooking the microgreens. And so
you were using fluorescent lights?
Yeah, compact fluorescent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so they, Cooperative Extension helped us troubleshoot, and we decided that we would run the lights at night during the coldest period of the 24 hours. And I think from that also learned that before buying the fans and louvers for this system, if anyone's going to build this system, it's best to turn on all of the lights that you have that will be on at any one given time, turn them on and record the temperature, and then size the fans accordingly, because it really depends on the size of the room and how many lights you have and all that to know what size fans you need.
But so you were able to sort it out just by turning them on at night? That's a very clever solution, by the way.
I know. And I think, what we realized is that worked for microgreens, because it's okay for microgreens to be a little leggy. And Jonathan would definitely explain this better than I can, but essentially, when you have the lights on at night, when it wouldn't normally be, it makes the plants taller and skinnier. And that ended up being okay for microgreens. But now we also use the room now that we have the setup. So when the microgreens and pea shoots are done for the season, we now use the room for starting our seedlings. So we start all of our alliums in there and tomatoes and peppers and all that. So we don't want to be running the lights at night and having those crops be leggy. So we had to buy the larger fan.
And are you still doing that? The microgreens? We
didn't last year. We ended up losing one of our buyers. Their retail outlet closed. And we're in the process of hopefully finding some new outlets for them. And if we do, then we'll pick it up again this year.
And have you heard from any other growers that they've started using your system?
I haven't. So if anyone hears this and is out there and did, please let me know.
Yeah. So one of the things that I know, I have never gotten a SARE farmer grant, but I've gotten some other SARE grants. And one of the big things is that you are required to do some kind of outreach. And so, because it is research for the public good, to reach other farmers. So Candice, could you talk a little bit about what the responsibilities are to share your research and do that outreach if you do receive a grant, a farmer grant?
Yeah, sharing the results is really a big part of SARE grants, as you said. And we want information generated from all these projects to make an impact on the farming community. So we do require that you have a plan for outreach included in your proposal. And this could be anything from hosting field days, writing up guides or fact sheets, making a video. There are all kinds of options. And we do provide some ideas on our website for that. And that's also another way you can use your technical advisor. They often have a lot of connections that they could share to be able to disseminate the results. Grant recipients are also required to report on their project in our online project database, which is available to the public. We do require progress reports during the project and then a final report at the end. This allows people to be able to see what was done, how it was done, and the results, maybe any challenges or barriers that you encountered, that sort of stuff. A lot of farmers, especially beginning farmers, use the database to learn more about things they're interested in pursuing.
Yeah, the database is a really amazing resource. And I think that, like, I would have no idea what Jennifer's microgreen growing setup is, except that, it's online. You can get it. And so anybody now can learn from what Jennifer did. And I think one of the beauties of this research is that it's paying somebody to take the risks. And so, yeah, there was some troubleshooting, but hopefully you're getting compensated while you're doing that, and then other people can benefit from it. So I'm wondering, Candice, if you could, I know people can go to the database and look themselves, but if you could give us some examples of other farmer grants that have been really innovative and stuck with you.
Yeah, there are a few that just stand out in my mind a little bit. Currently, there's a project in Massachusetts that's developing what they call an oyster bot. It's a remotely operated vehicle to in an aquaculture operation to identify and attach a line to ropeless oyster cages to be able to lift them out of the water. And so instead of when you have a line in the water, it can get entangled with a lot of marine megafauna. Stuff gets all over the lines and it makes it hard to pull them up. And you can get tangled. They get tangled and you can get tangled in the ropes on the deck. So using a ropeless system can potentially save a lot of time and effort and trouble. So that's a kind of an interesting project. there's another one in Red Hook, New York, where they're testing varieties of Mexican and Central American heirloom maize. And these are varieties that are expressly used for tortillas. And the sensitivity of maize to photoperiods, so they're light sensitive, and they cause irregular kernels. So they're specifically looking at varieties that can overcome that barrier of the photoperiods. There was another one in Rhode Island where they grew corn and field peas on their pasture, and it was a hog farm, and they allowed their pigs to harvest the corn and peas themselves. So instead of feeding them commercial feed, they fed themselves, and they compared these pigs to pigs that they were also growing with commercial feed, and they found that they could save almost $1 per pound of weight gain, which I thought was a pretty remarkable result. And they also found that the soil showed a slight increase in organic matter and macronutrients. So that's a promising long-term sustainable practice.
Yeah,
so that was a good one.
Those are all such cool and inspiring examples. So I'm wondering if you have kind of any final advice for farmers out there who are interested in pursuing research, but maybe, intimidated by the grant writing process. What's your advice?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the deadline for farmer grant applications is in November, and awards then are given in March. So you would be applying in November, but your project wouldn't start until March. So keep that timeline in your head. So the next chance to apply for grants will be November 2023. And I strongly suggest that you go to our website at northeastsare.org and look at the materials there, especially the call for proposals, and start early. Start early on figuring out all the pieces to the proposal and your project. And once you have your idea of the problem you want to address and how, you want to go and find a technical advisor to work with, and then give yourself plenty of time to gather all the information you need and put together your proposal. I have heard from many farmers that while they felt the proposal was a lot of work, putting the time into developing a thorough proposal makes the project go a lot more smoothly.
Jennifer, did you have any advice for folks?
I don't know. I think all of the things you mentioned are really helpful. Looking at examples of farmer grants that have been previously funded, reaching out to farmers who've received them and just picking their brains about their project and proposal. I think that's all good advice.
Yeah, and I think so. Like I said, I'm not a farmer. I have not received a farmer grant, but I have received other grants. And I think one big thing is always value your time and don't underestimate the amount of time that it is going to take you to do something. I don't think people usually will look at a budget and say, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think that's gonna take somebody that long, and I don't think we should be paying somebody $30 an hour." Like, definitely, your time is valuable, and I think it's a common thing for everyone to do, to underestimate how long something will take them and to undervalue themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you want to go back. I'm not sure if we covered the results from the two studies, if that's something that you want.
Yeah, I do. I would like to, and I apologize for being kind of all over the place. But yeah, I would like to go back and talk more about those. And I don't know if, like, Candice, I don't know if you want, I think we've kind of wrapped up with the SARE stuff. So I don't know if you want to sign off now, and I can just keep talking with Jennifer about the specifics of her two projects.
Yeah, that would be fine. And if you come, like, while you're listening back, if there's anything you decide you need anything more on or differently, just give me a call and you can do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's the work you're doing is great, and hopefully more farmers will will be inspired to do some research.
Yeah. And you picked a great person in Jennifer to have on this podcast because her projects are so good and she's very articulate and she did such a great job. Really inspiring.
Good.
Thanks, Candice.
Bye, Candice.
All right. Bye. Thanks.
Yeah, so the results. I think you mentioned you did you had this time series of your permanent raised beds, and then you were looking at the weed dynamics and the soil health and the yields.
Yeah. So we found that in all 4 plots, we had really high weed diversity, but low abundance, which matched our anecdotal observations of low weed pressure. And just understanding what that means in terms of labor, we also collected data on how many hours we were spending weeding. So from May to October in 2018, we spent 35 hours weeding. And in 2019, it was 38 hours. So to put that in some dollar context, that's, if you're paying someone $15 an hour, that's $525 to $570 a season. And I would love to see how this compares to traditional organic farming operation because it seems really low to me, but without, data from other systems, it's hard to put into context.
Yeah, that definitely seems low. I mean, especially what are you talking about in terms of what are you grossing on that amount of land? Right. Yeah.
Much more. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. So you and I both have spent a lot of time around weed ecologists. But one of the things, so this sort of high diversity, low abundance is that's exactly what you want. That's sort of the sign of a really healthy agro ecosystem, is that you're not a lot of organic farms you go to, it's just pigweed and lamb's quarters and that sort of high, the opposite, which is high abundance, low diversity, is sort of the sign that your weeds are, not that your weeds are unhealthy, but that it's not a super healthy agro ecosystem.
Right.
Were you finding, what did you find in terms of perennial weeds? I know that tends to be the problem when folks switch to a no-till system.
So the perennial weeds are an issue on the perimeter of both of the gardens. And basically what we end up doing, and we actually didn't start doing this until after this study because it didn't become an issue until after the study. So this might change our weeding times. But we spend probably 2 days edging around the entire garden areas for both gardens. So edging a half an acre.
What do you use to do that edging?
Right now we're just using a little wooden handled edging tool. So we're, stepping on it, rocking it back and forth and doing it by hand. But like I said, it takes maybe 2 days. It's not a huge time commitment, and it's worth it because crabgrass and cinquefoil and other things are creeping in. One thing I started last year, and I don't have enough time yet to know if it's working, is I planted a seedless Russian comfrey and I planted it along the edges with the hope that I won't have to edge again. Mm-hmm. So I did it in down one side of one of the gardens. And I think, as I understand it, the idea is that it will shade out and block perennial weeds from creeping in.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if anyone has actually done research on that.
I don't know. That would be a good SARE grant.
There's a SARE grant in the waiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the soil health and the yield? Yeah.
So soil health tests indicated optimal soil health in all 4 plots. We had overall scores between 86 and 97, with 100 being the highest. Biological soil health indicators from the permanent raised bed system improved between 2018 and 2019. So we had higher or better scores that year. I think the average was over 98%. And for yield, and we were comparing the permanent raised bed system to a control, which was the surrounding sod, which was actually better than we thought it was going to be, considering how sandy and how little organic matter there was. But it still was not nearly as good as the permanent raised bed system. For yield, we didn't find any significant difference in yield, which is, I think, a really good sign that, again, once you get past that first year of bed establishment, that the beds are just ready to produce and there's consistent yields across years. So, or years in terms of when the beds were established.
Mm-hmm. And what you said, you in those two that had high phosphorus, you weren't using fertilizer that had phosphorus, but what do you use for fertility?
So generally, I try not to use too much off-farm input and use cover crops. We try to keep the soil covered at all times or whenever possible with salt marsh hay. So part of there's the weed management that's passive in just the construction of the system, but then there's also, I guess, a more active weed management in that we use silage tarps in the spring to heat up and try to germinate any weed seeds that are at the surface. And we use salt marsh hay, so we're not introducing any weeds, through some other straw or hay brought in. And, we're cutting crops with big root systems at the soil level, so we're not ripping up weed seeds from below. So there are, we are doing other weed management strategies in addition to just the construction of the system.
Did you have to learn that lesson about cutting versus pulling the hard way?
Yeah, I think that, and a lot of the weeds that we're seeing now are volunteers from previous crops, mostly cut flowers. Our cut flower operation has expanded. And so if I don't get to, and I never do, cut them down before they go to seed, that's one of but thankfully they're at the soil surface. And so the silage tarp typically takes care of that. But yeah, we're definitely every year learning more and more about how to manage it, how to keep the soil in the beds and keep it from sloughing into the rows and keep the rows covered. So, the walkways covered so that, we're not, losing soil in rain events and that sort of thing.
And so something you didn't mention is that you also have a full-time job. So are you mostly doing this on the weekends or in your evenings? Or?
Yeah, it's sort of a early morning into the evening with a headlamp on the weekends. You know how it is. Yeah, it's squeezing it in when I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's new. I mean, I just started that position this summer. So previously I had been part-time.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you were part-time before.
Yeah.
And then as far as the microgreens, was there anything else about the results that you wanted to share?
I guess just that it was successful, and we found that through a budget analysis, which we also had some business folks from UNH Cooperative Extension help with, we saw that it pays for itself in the first year. So the setup costs were just over $2,300, and all of the details are in that pamphlet that's on our website. But so it pays off in the first year, and then after that, it's just your annual expenses for seed and soil.
Yeah. And you did find, though, I also read in your little blurb that you did find that the yields were lower than advertised.
They were a lot lower than what was in the Johnny's microgreen. They did a 2017 microgreens trial, and that's what I had used for my original projections for how much we could make. And our yields were I don't know if I have a percentage left, but they were considerably less.
Do you have an explanation or thoughts? Did you talk to them about why maybe?
I didn't. That would be a good idea. I'm not sure if it gets back to the legginess, like if the stems of the microgreens were so much thinner, and if they had better light, maybe the stems would be thicker and stronger and then therefore heavier. That would be my guess, but I don't really know. I mean, I don't think we could have added any more. We also kind of varied how much seed we were adding to the trays at the start to see what was optimal. And I think we met the max for how much seed we would want to add to the trays. And yeah, so I don't think it was an issue of spotty germination or not enough seed.
Yeah. Naive question. So do you use a fresh batch of potting soil for each round of microgreens?
We do. Yeah,
okay.
We did.
Uh-huh.
For this too. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And but it still comes out profitable.
It does, because the amount of soil needed is so minimal. It's really just enough to hold in the moisture, because they're not living long enough to pull a lot of nutrients from, or any, I think, from the soil. And so it's really more, as I understand it, to help hold the moisture in.
Cool.
And then I found, just for FYI for you, the estimated material cost for the permanent raised bed system. So if people were interested in constructing the system the way that we did, kind of a quick back of the envelope calculation was $200 per 100 foot by 32 inch bed. So if you're putting down the 4 inches of wood chips, the 4 inches of soil, it's about $200 per 100 foot bed. And that is about $21,000 per acre.
And that's the wood, assuming the wood chips are free.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
I think so.
That's
yeah.
the cost of the compost. Yeah. 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 That seems in line with other things that I've heard. Well, I really appreciate it. It was good to chat with you, and I think you've got a Comfrey grant in your future. So you better get on that, or you're going to get scooped by someone else. And I think it's cool. Like, not everybody wants to do research, but it's really great when people do. And I think, there's a certain satisfaction in doing the research. It's complementary to farming. So that's very cool. And, thanks for all your work.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Good to chat with you.
All right, listeners, go out there and get some money to do some farmer research. Don't forget to check out the resources on the website about the SARE Farmer Grants, Jennifer's farm, and her projects. She has some great little fact sheets. And it's never too early to start talking with someone who could be your technical service provider on your next farmer grant. Finally, coming from someone who has had grant proposals, more than one, not funded. If you submit a grant and it doesn't get funded, don't let it get you down. It's not personal. The SARE review teams are generally really thoughtful in providing feedback to let you know how you could strengthen a proposal in the future. And good ideas generally don't go bad. Maybe you had a good idea and you just didn't back it up with what they needed to fund your proposal, but keep pursuing those great ideas.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here, just jumping in real quick to catch you up on some of what we have going on. We, that is Jackson, myself, and Clara Coleman, just got back from a little no-till growers family trip over to the Virginia Biological Farmers Conference in Roanoke, Virginia, and that was really great. Huge shout out to the VABF for putting on such a great event. We plan to take the crew to a conference every year if we can, just to attend and hang out. So we'll be on the lookout for another great conference next year. Have you checked out the new No-Till Growers forum yet? It is awesome. You can find the forum at notillgrowers.com. We will also put a link in the show notes. Also, like everything we do, the forum is free and open to the public. If you'd like to support our work, you can pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at notillgrowers.com or one of the no-till hats, which are back in stock. The proceeds from those sales at notillgrowers.com go to making you more content. Or lastly, you can always become a Patreon member at patreon.com/no-till-growers, where not only may you get discounts on our stuff, but at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Sean at All About the Garden, Bill Altman, Ian at Grindstone Farms, Stephen Smith, and Oh Hi Roots. Huge shout out to everyone who supports our show in whatever way that you can. The Patreon page, for instance, is the lifeblood of our work, so we hope you will hop on board there at patreon.com/no-till-growers. And that's it for me. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week. Bye.